Dwayne Hulbert, and welcome to Learn and Love Music. Today we're going to look at a couple of waltzes by Frédéric Chopin. In these waltzes there are three different areas we're going to look at: articulation, phrasing, and pedaling. And stick around to the end when I'll be playing through one of my favorite waltzes. Frédéric Chopin was one of the best known composers of the 19th century. He was from Poland, and he loved to write music that brought out the spirit of Polish music and culture. He had a great affinity for dance music, and of course a waltz is a dance. And he loved the piano. Most of his works are written for piano. Very few pieces are written for other orchestra pieces. He wrote some concertos as well, but mostly solo pieces for piano. First we'll talk about articulation. What is articulation? How long the notes are, whether the notes are short or long, and whether they have accents on them or not. As we look at this first waltz, Opus 18, we'll hear a very distinctive articulation that goes something like this. There's staccato, phrase, staccato, phrase, staccato, phrase, accent. What's clever about Chopin's way of putting this on the page is that he doesn't make the first beat heavy, he makes the first beat light. So it's light, light, light. So when I read the notes on the page, I see staccato, phrase, staccato, and then when he puts a little hat on top of that last one, that's the more exciting one because it has a détaché mark, a little stronger accent. And then he goes back and takes that same theme on the way back down, but he does it differently. In the first phrase we did 1, 2, 3, short on 1. On the way back down he does long, short on 3, short, long, short, long. So it's just a variation on it. So let's listen to those two different ways that he uses articulation in the theme. Here's the short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, heavy, short, long, short, long, short, long. So it's almost the same melody, but he kind of turns it around on the way back down. The next piece we're going to do is number 3 in the book. It's a Grande Valse Brillante in A-flat major. And here, this demonstrates some of the articulations that he uses in this, what is a very big waltz. And this waltz has the use of staccato chords that sort of upset the beginning. We have more of an announcement first. Staccato chords. And that's a specific kind of touch, and then he repeats it. Higher, and then all of that is just the introduction to this beautiful, beautiful waltz. Once we get into the waltz, you'll notice that it's very typical of waltzes to have this articulation, or this kind of a touch. Touch is called non-legato. It means it's not really short and it's not really long. But what's beautiful about it, now we're going to talk a little bit about the phrasing in this piece, because here he takes the touch of the left hand and blends it with the phrasing in the right hand, which is a long line of 4 measures long. We used to call this in school chuck chuck accompaniment, which you have chuck chuck, chuck chuck, chuck chuck, chuck chuck. So it's not short, not long, but just provides a really foundation for the beautiful melodies above. Next we're going to talk about phrasing, how the notes are grouped together. And one of the things that Chopin does, he always wants to throw a curve at you. It's never quite what you'd expect. So in this first waltz, one of the things that's interesting, in the beginning he does a dot or a staccato note that goes across the bar line. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it kind of throws us a little bit as you listen to the rhythm. So it sounds a little disjunct when I break them up, but when you put it all together, it really sounds very exciting. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Up, down, up, down. So we get that kind of bum, 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 bum. And that waltz feel is exactly what we talked about earlier in that step. It's a big step, a medium step, and a short step. And it gives it that true waltz feel. In the other piece, the Grand Valse Brilliant, it's similar, but maybe the melody is a little more smooth here. And so the phrasing is long, long phrase, take a little time. You'll notice that this is very typical of most music in the 19th century Romantic period because the phrases are 4 bars long and then a breath. 4 bars long and a breath. So we have, over those 4 bars, we have a phrase line and then a rest. Phrase line and then a rest. And in the next section of this waltz, the big A-flat waltz, instead of doing 4 bars of smooth, he does more of a virtuoso run going up in 2-bar groups. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And he does it softly. So this, because the phrases are shorter, it sounds a little bit more jagged, but also a little bit more exciting in this passage. So why is pedaling important in Chopin? Let's look at that first piece, the Grand Valse Brilliant in Opus 18. And you'll note that Chopin uses a pretty consistent pedal mark at the beginning of each measure with that little PED and the little asterisk that goes up at the end of the measure. And so when I pedal this, I'm gonna in just a second, we're gonna look down at my foot. But what we do is we slowly lift through the measure and then catch the bass note and then slowly lift up and then catch the bass note. So I'm gonna play the left hand alone while you look at my feet. Now we're going to look at my feet while I play the left hand and the right hand together with the pedal. So let's look at another Chopin waltz, the A minor waltz, Opus 34, number 2. This is a simpler piece, more lyrical, very pretty, but there's a problem with it. There are no pedal markings in the original edition. So what we have to do as performers is we have to try to imagine what Chopin would have liked in this. This is what I do with this piece. It's a beautiful piece in A minor. It's one of the slow waltzes. But with pedaling, we're going to use the same idea we talked about in the other piece where you go put your foot down on the first beat and float up to the third beat, down on the first beat. So you'd have this kind of a thing. Let's look at my foot when I do this A minor waltz. Foot down, slow catch, then slow up, catch, slow up. Slow up. That really works beautifully on a slow piece, because if I didn't do that, it would get really, really blurry. But if I didn't use pedal at all, as you see on the page, that doesn't mean you don't use pedal. It just means you have to be very careful with the pedal. And remember, pedal is not just going down and up. Most often in pedaling, even in most romantic pieces, I go down fast, up slow, down fast, up slow. You just sort of let the sound kind of bleed out of the pedal. and it makes a very, very beautiful, clear sound, and it's not blurry either. I'd now like to play a little bit of the Opus 34 number 1 waltz. This is a piece that I've played a lot and I've really enjoyed. In fact, if you stay tuned to this channel, you can hear me play this piece in its entirety at the end of this presentation, the end of this video. In this one, what I'd like to do, just for fun, is to go through the opening of this brilliant waltz, and you're going to be watching my foot, and I'm going to be talking aloud what I'm doing with my foot. So you'll be able to see my foot, and also I'll be telling you what I'm doing with your foot. Pedal down. Up, down. Pedal down. Pedal down. Hold, 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 hold. Float, float. Pedal down, pedal down, pedal down, pedal down, up, pedal down, up, pedal down, up, pedal float. Pedal down, pedal down, pedal down, pedal down. So as you can see, if I had to do that in concert, it would be really hard. But it does help you understand the complexity of playing with your hands and playing with your foot. And remember, students, when you practice the piano, it's never just all the way down and all the way up. It's down fast and float up. That's my favorite saying for my students when it comes to teaching the pedal. Thanks for joining me on Learn and Love Music. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on the works of Chopin as we looked at phrasing, articulation, and pedaling. If you like our channel, please click like or even subscribe. That would be even better. And remember to stick around to the end because I'm going to do an entire performance of the A-flat Opus 34 Waltz of Chopin. Hope to see you next time.